So what is on-farm food safety? Food safety is preventing and responding to any kind of microbial contamination, whether that be biological, chemical, or physical. Biological could be any kind of pathogens such as E. coli or listeria, things that you may hear about in the news. Chemical, any kind of lubricants or pesticides. And physical, stones, wood, shards of glass, anything that might get into your production. So food safety is on-farm food safety is looking at all those potential contaminants and trying to reduce any risk of contamination. And then also, what do you do in the event that something does get contaminated? What are kind of actions and procedures that you can have in place to reduce and deal with contamination? So I like to start out by talking when I do the introductory spiel about what this is kind of what are the basic principles of food safety. So I think about it in 4 kind of topic areas. USDA refers to it as clean, but not necessarily clean, but not clean in a sanitary way, but clean in how do we reduce pathogens. So those 4 areas are clean soil, clean water, clean hands, and clean contact surfaces. So roughly represented with these pictures, but clean soil can include anything from any kind of soil inputs that you put into your farm, or how healthy your soil is, and any kind of pathogens that might be in the soil, because soil, is surrounding your produce and also can be a vector for transporting pathogens from one part of your farm to another, particularly in the harvest and production process. Another big aspect of that, and another vector for pathogen flow is water. So food safety often talks about what kind of irrigation water you use. It talks about cleaning hands. It talks about how pooling water and water usage and water sources, including water testing. Some standards have regulations for water standards and levels of various pathogens in it. Another big on-farm food safety concern is worker health and hygiene, so cleaning hands and making sure employees are healthy, no illnesses, and reducing kind of contact with produce if any employees are sick. And then also contact surfaces, so how soil and hands and other things are interacting with produce, and from one place to another, from production to harvest to packing, what surfaces are being in contact with your produce that might potentially transfer pathogens from one area to another. So to reiterate some other topic areas, some things to think about in terms of surface areas, for example, is shoes, how shoes can track soil or water from one area of the farm to another, from an animal crop to a field crop to maybe an area where you pack produce. Another contact surface to think about is tools and how you harvest your product, and if you do any kind of processing, where that comes into play. So having some procedures in place for thinking about how you would clean and maintain equipment and tools, from knives all the way up to more heavy machinery, if that applies to your farm. Also a big one is ways for packaging and for collecting, harvesting produce, so what kind of bins you use, whether it be packaging or packing bins. So there's different strategies for navigating that. One of the concerns is soil from the farm getting onto the bottom of a bin, and so there's different strategies for trying to work around that. So these are 3 different strategies that we've seen on farms. So for example, this farm uses a turned over bin, so therefore they're not putting the bin directly on the ground. So when they take that bin and they put it in the truck and they stack it on top of each other, it's not, that soil isn't dripping down onto the bin below it. Another strategy that is used on this farm, and these are all farms in Washington, is to use different types of bins. So they use buckets when they're in the field, and then they use these boxes for this immediately goes into their packing and delivery to wherever their market is. So in that way, they're avoiding any kind of soil contact that would come from the bottom of the bin by putting it directly in. And then this farm, I created an innovative process for constructing their own wheel system that would go through the rows in their farm. So that was pretty cool. All these pictures are found in the book that we have resourced to show you guys later. Another topic that comes up a lot in food safety is animals. So wild, domestic, and farm animals, because they can often carry pathogens. So trying to keep those processes as separate as possible, although obviously they do interact, and wild animals in particular, it's really hard to keep them off the field, but if in the event that there's any kind of animal intrusion, such as eating produce or leaving feces in the fields, you kind of want to think about what would you do in that event if there is kind of any contamination, or are there particular areas that dogs are allowed to be either your own or visitors' dogs, thinking about that. And then also the farm animals into your field crops is something you want to think about. And then if there is information about what you could do to prevent wild animals, so some deterrence, or if there was feces on the ground, to make sure your employees or yourself know where not to harvest particular produce. So one strategy for that is to actually put in flags to mark where there has been animals. And something to always be in mind is to continually to monitor your farm for any signs of this kind of thing. So that's something that if you were to get an audit or certification related to food safety, that's something that they would look for. Another one is water. So both